pleasure having all of you here with me. We have Gunjan. I do not think we have Siddha on as yet. Okay, so if you guys can just look into that. But thank you for all being here. We've been chatting about short form video. We've been chatting about Gen Z, and I think this is the first opportunity where we're chatting about Gen Z and short form video, right? So the conversation is broken into two parts, right? Is about how India as an internet economy and India as an internet universe was first like content creators, and then they were creating content in the form of video, they were creating content in the form of text, bandwidth, 4G, and the enablement of the internet has allowed for a lot more video content consumption and therefore a lot of video content creation. While we were speaking before, one of the key points of interest for me, right, is when we started out doing digital in 2008 and 2009 was that statistics often spoke about India being a content consumer, right, or the Indian audience being a content consumer, and very few of them were actually content creators, right? But if you look at the last 4.5-5 years, everybody is a content creator, right? Like we have old grandmothers who are doing reels, and we have kids who have now become influencers and are creating content, and like most suckers, we're actually getting sucked into just scrolling and consuming this content. So we're all over here, and I think the best part about this panel is the representation. We have the talent side, we have a D2C brand, we have a house of brands, who's traditionally looked at structured advertising as we all know it. I have a fellow agency person who I don't know how he has come on a Friday afternoon, not adhering to deadlines yet. So I think we have a very fun mix of people amongst us, and I'd start off by just trying to open up this conversation about just Gen Z and short format video, and like a very nice agency person, I'll start with brands. So let's see. Kirtiman, you want to start off by saying, like you're from Reckitt, and obviously you're a house of brands, and for lots of brands inside of your portfolio, Gen Z is supremely important, and definitely short form video to market to them is supremely important. What do you see as some of the things that are changing in the whole advertising ecosystem?
Essentially, short form video, as you rightly said, it's democratized the whole setup of creating content creation. So Indians are not just consumers, they're creators now. You don't need a lot of time or that expensive setup or those resources to be a creator now. I was reading this survey that said that almost 240 million people are consuming short form videos, and this number would go twofolds in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a massive opportunity for brands. And for consumers as well, it's a great time because they've got so many, and they're not just stuck to one particular platform. They've got a host of platforms where they can consume and create content together.
And before I jump into the others, Sahil, for us, right? Whenever we would be creating plans for brands, Sahil, are you frozen?
No, I'm here. Can you? All right.
Yeah. No, I said when as agency folk, right, we were much happier creating content decks and content plans when we had 3 or 4 platforms, right? But today, and I recently for our next year strategy was trying to put all the platforms that we had together. It came to me in the form of an Excel sheet, right? And when it came to me in the form of an Excel sheet, I was really scared, right? I was like, dude, some of these names I've not even heard of, but there are millions of people who are over here. And obviously, right, wherever the consumer is, the advertiser is, and wherever the advertiser is, there is a shit ton of growth and money. How is it for you as an agency guy, man? Like, I'm struggling making strategies for each of these platforms, but what do you think has changed? What do you think has changed from the consumer's point of view? What do you think has changed from the content consumption point of view? And how are you looking at using it across all the brands that you have?
I think from an agency point of view, the one thing that is just that before 2018, 2019, rather, all agency folks used to owe 5% of and so forth. There's a
Anyone not being able to hear you clearly?
Is my network okay or?
No, we're not able to hear you clearly. Sahil, I'll come back to you.
Okay, let me just come back.
I'll come back to you. But Gunjan, I'll come to you, right? Like, talent is no longer just a celebrity. Talent is no longer just a A-grade influencer. I don't even know how I can bucket a nano, micro, macro, and the 15 other things that we have created as people in this industry. But talent is everywhere, right? Like, you saw that guy who made that Kacha Badam video, which ruined my Instagram feed for 21 clear days. But but we're finding talent in so many different places, right? Content is transforming lives. How do you see the short form video, and what is it that from a talent point of view you guys are doing at OML to just to enable this to work for the larger brand ecosystem?
Sure, I think Pratik, that's a great question, because I feel like now talent is seen beyond just, hey, this is the face that my audiences look up to. I think talent on social media today is a combination of three things. They've become the media vehicle because they have inherent audiences built into their fan following. They are the creative directors, because eventually when a brand lets them sort of drive the bus in terms of how they communicate with their audiences, you get a more organic outcome and therefore higher reach, and we've all seen these. And finally, of course, they are ambassadors, because we all know the correlation between audiences being able to relate with what they're saying. Like, for example, I've seen Tanmay's bathroom in videos, not in his house. That's all of us, right? So when he says, hey, trust a product from Bombay Shaving Company, you're more likely to listen to that as opposed to, a celebrity who just feels so out of reach that you only see them on the red carpet. And I think a lot of celebrities are adapting to this as well. They realize that now you sort of need to peel off that layer and become more approachable, and you're really living in the public eye. But I think coming to what brands make of this, I think, and obviously Siddha, you've seen this, Anupam, you've seen this, but I think given the fact that influencer marketing allows full funnel marketing options now, all brands today are D2C brands. You don't have a choice but to behave like a D2C brand. Sorry, Nakul, we've not had a chance to work together at Josh, but we managed the entire YouTube Shorts campaign around Badshah when he launched Jugnu and the Hook Up Step Challenge. And Pratik, what you mentioned about Kacha Badam taking over, unfortunately, we were responsible for the one that happened just before, And that is the power of short form content, and I think power of some of the platforms, including Josh, that are allowing people to create content so easily that just being able to riff off a music track, being able to remix something that already exists, being able to add your own touch, the burden and the onus of coming up with something original from scratch, etc., is almost disappeared. And I think that's also fueling so much of what we see around us.
And I think, and while Sahil is away, right, like I'll don the hat of a person who runs multiple agencies inside of this ecosystem. I think there are challenges that we're facing on the agency side, and there are challenges that we're facing with brands, right? A lot of the people who are sitting at the top of brands today have come from very structured advertising, right? They've come from very structured, I want a director to be of a certain grade. I'm not going to compromise on camera. I'm not going to compromise on light. My output needs to be 4K, even though, HD quality is just about penetrating in half India. And then go back and saying, your mobile phone is everything, right? Like you said, Gunjan, the content creator is the director, the cinematographer, the creative producer. He's writing his own script, right? And unfortunately, we've all seen Tanmay's bathroom. Right, but the ability for this kind of inclusiveness is what is building brand relatability and what is building advocacy, right? Like, and the the crux of influencer marketing is influencing, right? But with a lot of the celebrities and a lot of the people over there, you obviously understand why they've associated themselves with the brand. We've taken that journey, and like you'll have an Akshay Kumar associated with fitness brands, you'll have a Kareena Kapoor associated with beauty brands, and logically it makes sense. But the consumer has stopped buying into their usage of the brands, right? The general conversation of a lot of celebrities, tweeting using an iPhone, but actually, doing it for some other phone company, right? There were 3 years where this was the only boo-boo you could make in an influencer campaign, right? I am doing this for Vivo, I am doing this for Oppo, sent by Twitter from iPhone. But and you really don't believe that the celebrity is going to be using your product, because you inherently think of the person using a higher grade of product or a more expensive product, or their lifestyle not according to the product that they're actually selling. But with the short format, with the fact that you have the ability to know what's a part of their life, that barrier is breaking, right? And the fact that you're seeing it in their natural surrounding. If I saw, like a toothpaste in the bathroom of Tanmay Bhatt put in that place, and he's not talking about it, I know for hell he uses that toothpaste, right? Or at least it's a lot better of a branded content than Colgate being written right at the bottom. So so I think it's a very interesting time where both brands and agencies are trying to adjust, right? We're trying to wonder what the hell is happening to our production budgets, and they're trying to wonder what's happening to the big directors that they usually speak to. And that adjustment is the fun part of the conversation. So just to go, just to move forward, what I'll do is I'll take Nakul's point of view on this, because he's running the platform where most of this brand is being created, and then I'll go to Siddha, because she's running a brand where she's happiest working with people who are creating content for her and not really spending crores of rupees going to a big celebrity yet Siddha. She's looking at me saying, who says I'm not going after a big celebrity? But please, Nakul, start with you.
Thanks, Pratik. In fact, I think everybody, Gunjan herself has summed it really well, and you've been talking about it. I think let's go from time when actually the access to internet actually exponentially grew, right, in India. Likes of Jio bringing in cheap data, in India. What we have seen in Josh particularly is that from the content access now is not only in tier 1, but likes of tier 2 and tier 3, users are coming to the forefront, right, in terms of creator ecosystem or consuming content in the smaller markets, right? So if you look at what kind of an audience it is, it's basically very on the move, short on time. That's the kind of user that we have at this point of time, and their preferences are to consume snackable content, quick on the move kind of approach that they have, right? So if you look at Josh, obviously when TikTok got banned and there was a lot of homegrown apps that took the space, right? If you look at that time, 2020 to now, you would see that we've actually surpassed that that audience base that TikTok had. We all short form video apps in total would have over about 240 million monthly active users, right? Out of that, about 168 million monthly active users are on Josh, right? With about 17 million users coming on a daily basis, right? So this change has come, progressively from the tier 2 and the tier 3 markets. If you look at the content consumption itself, right, 65% of these users are from and maybe below age group of 25, right? And 65% or more content is being consumed in tier 2 markets, right? And that too, these consumers want to actually consume content in their own local language, right? When we were growing up, right, influencers were celebrities, right? Today, a young audience relates to a guy who's become an influencer from their local communities, right? So the localization of content at a local level, it has exponentially grown, right? So I think the future is bright. Obviously, one has to look at how it evolves, right? Like so social commerce, likes of how things would grow in terms of creating a content creator ecosystem, right? These guys are not professionals, right? These are amateurs who actually started creating content and started getting followership. So I think, that's the 2-3 points that I wanted to add. Maybe, Siddha would have, something to add on that as well.
No, so Siddha and Anupam, I think both, right? Like from what I want, if you guys could just put some light on the fact that India is, and everybody has a different number to it. In my opinion, India has 13 different countries within itself. I'm not asking for it to be split or anything before I get loaded after this.
Considering Ukraine and Russia
I have no idea what you're talking about, Nakul. But basically there are so many different cultures and subcultures, and even inside of these regions, what people are doing in cities versus what people are doing in tier 2 and tier 3 cities is very, very different, right? So for both of you, right, one obviously is on a mission to change eyewear for the entire country, and therefore the market is a lot more broader. But for you, Siddha, how do you look at short form video, the content creators aiding your marketing efforts in the context of Bombay Shaving Company? And and Anupam, for you, more importantly, we'll quickly move from one to the other, is what is the strategy between the metro cities and the smaller towns, and are you approaching them completely differently? So Siddha, we'll start with you and then quickly move to you, Anupam.
Great point, everyone. So I'll just add on to the points that we've mentioned, right? So Bombay Shaving Company as a whole is within itself also 2 brands, because there is Bombay Shaving Company, the men's business, and then there's Bombay Shaving Company, the women's business. The women's business is only a year old, but we've started a different social journey, because like you said, right, you can't speak to audiences within like a defined gender. Of course, there's a whole spectrum, but within these spectrums with the same kind of messaging, and we realize that very quickly. So that is one challenge. One is that, right? The other challenge, like you said, is so all of these today the ecosystem of short form video is a 3-sided network with platforms at the center, but users, creators, and advertisers at each of the end, right? And each interacts with the ecosystem very differently. So from a brand and advertising POV, and to Nakul's point, because
is it a disturbance at my end? Or?
No.
Yeah, I thought it's
Okay, Anupam, you want to take on? We'll come back to Siddha. I'll pick it up from wherever she left it.
Yeah, sure. So cool. Yeah. So before I start, I would say we have already disrupted the eyewear market. But in terms of short format, I think there's a lot of opportunity because for most of the brands which have started in the last 4 or 5 years, even recently, the major market or revenue or consumption that happens are coming from metros. Now, I'm not saying that when you go on to a certain media or a short format video, there's a competition with any other media, be it TV or digital or longer format or whatever. But there's a bigger opportunity because these Gen Zs, they're so sensitive about their image, which brand they relate to, unlike the millennials that were very happy with a label on their shoes, Nike or Adidas written on their jackets. These people actually consume even social media in a fashion where they look for communities where they feel related to. And hence, with short format video, currently, I can at least count 10 languages where there are multiple influencers, influencing different cohorts of people. And the followers really feel related to them. And that gives the brands an opportunity to actually reach out to the people, telling them, they can be whatever and whoever they choose to be, instead of, putting them in a bottle and, doing the entire brand in one fashion or through one communication. Another good, primary benefits is the cost that you're mentioning, that we need high-end cameras, DOPs, directors for creatives. Now you can actually do a reel which can go viral in just 10,000 rupees. So I really love this space because it's the creator's world.
He has now put a value to it also, guys.
Exactly, and he's making money for it. And because, as you mentioned, India is 13 countries, if not 13, in larger
space of things, it's at least 8. Even if you just take languages like Hindi, English, and 4 southern languages, Marathi, Gujarati, and there are others. So it gives you an opportunity to actually reach out to specific markets as per your priority, as per your objective, as per your brand, as per your reach. Even for me, where stores are so important, because in my category, a lot of people really, we've seen a pattern that people try on the app and then go to the store and see try on the glasses, because they want to feel like you're wearing glasses. That you want to feel the glasses, how it's fitting on your temple, how it's fitting on your nose, everything else. So stores become very important to me. So this space also allows me to put my resources exactly where I need them to be. So yeah, that was my point.
So Sahil and Siddha, okay, you're back. So please complete your point. We missed you.
Very sure.
We missed you.
But
the 3-pronged strategy of the advertiser, the content creator, and I think that's where you talked about.
Yeah, so the network is 3-pronged, and that's where it's while there are a lot of benefits, there are a lot of complexities as well. So I'll talk about each. One is that each of the platforms, while short form is a consistent, and now all long form platforms will also have one short form end, etc. What each of the platforms does is that it either has a very distinct combination of who are the people that are spending time on the platform, cross what are they seeking, cross the sort of income group that they fall in broadly, right? From like a tier cross, income cross, that perspective. So that's why this is such a nuanced balance, because you can't lose one to the other. India too is a very big market. If you follow China, India will SFP as a platform will go 3 to 4x. So what we realize as brands is that people come on this platform to satiate that intermittent boredom, right? So it's the micro boredom, one session at a time, that they want to let go of. So it's within every 4-5 minutes they will scroll through maybe 10-20 types of content for 5 seconds each, and so the time spent per visit is like the 4 to 5 minutes. So for a brand to make an impact in that time, while also not in their face being I am here to sell you, is a very, very complicated nuance. So I think the one thing that brands need to align is the aesthetic of the platform. So it's very important for the brands to be very, very clear that, hey, this is what the user is seeking, and how can I talk about the messaging of my brand within the aesthetic of this. So for example, the part that I would communicate on a YouTube would be very different than what I would communicate on Instagram and Mod. Apart from just the vernacular. Again, vernacular is so complex now that now 1 in every 2 videos is either viewed in Hindi or Tamil. So it's so the ecosystem is amazing. Like you said, the benefits are 3-fold. I think one is the ability to reach many more people with distinct targeting and having a very, very data-led approach. That is very amazing. And hence, having moment marketing in those specific regions becomes amazing. And that, the great example of that is Zomato with Allu Arjun's movie Pushpa. They immediately onboarded Allu Arjun. I know it's not like the influencer and short video platform, but the ability to, in such manner, be very involved in the local nuance, theme, scenes, which people in different parts of the country might not have a view on, but it will be huge in that region, becomes amazing. And then the third part is, of course, the ability for you to really romanticize the product. For example, we are very focused on who are the people that will be the influencers for us. So we really need, for example, for me, hair removal is something that I need to romance. It's not something easy for me to romance on like a woman applying something and taking it out. So it's a whole balance of that. So how to make that aesthetics align to the platform, to the brand, and still, bring that ROI is a very nuanced balance. I think the drawbacks of that, on the other hand, are that you really don't know the impact of influencers for quite some time, right? Because an influencer ecosystem could impact in multiple ways. They could look at you on the feed, they'll forget about it. It's like IPL mein dekha bhul gaya. फिर हो सकता है 2 weeks later they see some other ad and then they might go to your website. So you will never really be able to attribute outcomes. So that's why the internal struggle that I always face is this, right? an ambassador, right? Well, we do have an ambassador. It's like for the women's life and for the men's business Ashwin. It's always a balance as to ye bhi hai, and then there's this whole influencer network. Jiska attribution is difficult because of the way now data is consumed. So I think these are two, and then the third part is now the whole like tags on partnerships, collaboration, etc. They made the influencer cause also very celebrity-like. Or even though the influencer might really believe in the brand, might really love the brand, but that's their bread and butter, right? So they will not, beyond a particular point, do something for a brand for free. They rather create their own content. So that nuance, I think that has somewhere reduced, at least in my head, the potential efficacy of what this short form video can potentially do for a brand.
Siddha, I have a very, very strong point of view on this attribution, right? A large part of why the attribution is not happening in the influencer ecosystem is two reasons, right? One is media agencies, and the second is the creators themselves, right? If I promise you, I love numbers. I have a beautiful Excel sheet which I promise to never share on this platform, but that Excel sheet actually mathematically proves what an influencer should get paid, right? And the complexity of the formula I did, right? All influencers will come after me with a knife, right? So today I have obviously pissed off political people. Now I've pissed off influencers. But really the attribution ability, right? And if you look at the attribution ability of the way that the West and very strangely the way China is actually adapting it,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Attribution is beautifully part of ecosystems, right? And also as Indians and as the people who are running this data world in the digital economy as we have, we love the silos. The silos equals lesser information. The silos equals lesser accountability, right? And as soon as you are out there to change the game and to put this ROI metric in the middle of the conversation, offline, I will tell you what has happened over the last 2 weeks about just the IPL and us trying to disrupt that sort of a model and how you get back or shut down. But I think attribution is also a collective responsibility that we all as an ecosystem need to chase, right? I can't go. I run an influencer agency. I mean, Gunjan runs an influencer agency. Sahil works like I'm sure he has an influencer program that he's running, right? If all three of us don't go with the same plan, right? How are you able to give this metric and the other person is not able to give this metric, right? And innately we don't trust until the whole world is doing it. So for us to be able to do this attribution is possible, but the attribution has to happen from the entire ecosystem, or the need for the attribution has to happen from the entire ecosystem, right? I remember back in the day when they were trying to link video views on digital to TRPs, right? There was a whole 2 years that all media agencies in this country spent trying to make a TRP equivalent plan to digital video buying, right? And I want to take a gun and shoot myself in the head, but I thought I'd much rather take the gun and shoot other people. Now I'm going to get killed by them also. So anyway,
but still try to do that. You are still trying to do that.
I think just to what you're saying, right? I think actually digital is the only place where that elusive attribution, which has never happened in marketing, can actually happen.
Exactly.
Because so far, all brand managers have been hiding behind awareness.
Correct.
Awareness kiya, but how awareness actually translates into sales?
Exactly.
No brand managers ever really been able to link that. But I think with digital, that's actually possible. Again, to Pratik's point, it's not just influencers hiding behind their numbers. I actually think that there is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the whole ecosystem. And just like what you were talking about, the whole, like, let's find a TRP equivalent for digital. On digital itself, you have different platforms evaluating views differently. On YouTube,
Correct.
If you spend 30 seconds on a video, it gets counted as a view. On Instagram, it's 3 seconds. I think on Facebook, one time I read that even if you're on the same page and the video hasn't even started, it counts as a view. Nobody has a common benchmark. So if you're not even going to be able to attribute a view as a common metric, then you can't really compare platform to platform.
The first time Gunjan and I ever saw a TikTok report, okay, I promise you I remember this, right? A TikTok report for one of the brands that we did. It showed 4 billion views, yeah. And like I said, I'm fairly good with numbers.
Right. That's like half the world saw it, right?
Yeah.
That's more penetration than Kohli.
I think I've seen reports with more than 100 billion views.
So
Kid
the
you
whole
not.
world saw it like X times
the
over.
platform proving aliens exist. Yeah. So they have answered.
Yeah, I've seen platforms saying more than a crore UGCs made and more than like 100 billion views. So yeah, and people buy.
Everybody's number
buy
one.
it.
Don't worry. Everybody's number one.
So I think Pratik, just to talk about this point about attribution, right? I think the bigger challenge in the digital platform space is that everybody's a walled garden, right? There's a Facebook not sharing data with Google not sharing data with others. So what's happening at the end of the day that there are you have different platforms attributing differently, right? Like what Gunjan said, right? That at the end of the day, definition for a view for Facebook, for Google, for YouTube, for other platforms is very, very different, right? But at the end of the day, I think when we talk about content creator attribution versus the platform attribution, right? So there are two things, right? Today, a content creator on YouTube and a content creator or a short form video app, right, would have different attribution, outcomes, right? In the sense that at the end of the day, if you look at, say, the likes of, Josh, I'll give you an example, right? We ran a campaign with Badshah, right? Where we got these creators, which were local creators, and one of this creator actually was, had more following, locally than what Badshah could actually have, right? In the sense that and both were on the same platform. So outcomes are very, very important, I think, and we have to see from a lens of a particular platform per se, because today television would have, one matrix, right? That this is what everybody needs to follow, and we know what's happened with the likes of Republic, etc. But at the end of the day, how do we, create that entire ecosystem to come together? I think that's a bigger discussion that we as marketers and digital folks need to have. I think that's my.
Just to add to what Nakul is saying, and Sahil, I'd like you to address this, right? Is that we talk of social commerce, right? And we talk about social commerce as being commerce for the social media platforms that we are building across the board, right? But it's actually social commerce on Josh.
I agree.
Social commerce on Instagram.
Fully
social
agree.
Commerce on Facebook. Then you're asking, what the hell is Google doing on a social commerce point of view, right? It is not social commerce as much as it is platform commerce, right? And therefore, if I am Anupam, or if I am Kirtiman and I'm sitting on the other side of the fence, I'm like, boss, meko Josh will give me another separate attribution. Instagram will give me a separate attribution. Facebook, even though Facebook and Instagram part of the same family, both of them will give me a separate attribution, right? YouTube aayega tab aayega, and now I have to look at my own social commerce platforms as well as to what I'm doing from a D2C side point, right? As an agency person, Sahil, I know you and I both face this question every day, right? What is my ROI going to be on e-commerce channel 1 versus e-commerce channel 2? And now we're coming down to social commerce channel 1 and social commerce channel 2. Right? What do you think that we as an ecosystem need to do to drive this Gen Z who's obviously getting massively impressed by the kind of content these content creators are creating? How do we take them down the funnel, and how do we report it back to Siddha, man? She's really concerned about this. So
So Pratik, great question. In fact, I really differ when people talk about ecosystems and fraternities and together we've got to solve for.
Yeah.
I really think it's not going to be, and especially on digital, it's not going to be one size fits all. In fact, brands are behaving very, very differently with different kinds of objectives on digital, right? So I don't think there is a clear answer to solving through attribution for all brands put together on every platform. So that's one. Second, we get this question a lot, man, and the only way to answer it is to actually sit down and go through the details of what the brand is wanting to do in the space, And how do we sort of then join the dots and build a custom attribution model? So, I mean, at WATConsult, we've done this for many, many brands, where we've made sure that end-to-end listening, right from listening to content to actually tracking to actually reporting and therefore driving insights, is being done for a brand in a very customized way possible, which is very different from brand B. Yeah. For example, a Tata Motors in the automobile segment will be very different from an ICICI Lombard, which will, have a very different set of easy cut to, what a Bombay shaving company would have. So it's not really one size fits all, and yeah, we're all looking for answers for sure.
No, and for me, right, like, what this continues to bring to the fore, right, is that this Gen Z, more importantly, right, and I come back to the Gen Z, right, like, it's a very different generation, right? Like, I think the millennials, and I'm going to make a guess over here that most of us are millennials, but we were the in-betweeners, yeah. We've seen the slow life. We've seen the value of the television channel, or the television being not attributed, I will not use the word over here, but television being allowed for you to be seen, right? Versus the one television home that India often spoke about became a 5 television home just because you had a mobile phone in your hand, right? They had their own lives, they had their own journey. A large part of it, with Web3 coming into the fore, the generation that we are in, the early parts of the generation that we are in from a millennial point of view, will not understand a large part of this transformation. We're almost sitting, we're sitting at the start of the digital age primarily, right? But the digital age is going to grow much faster than the industrial age did, right? So the gaps that we are going to be creating between these generations are going to be much larger than what they were before. You could often associate with what your parents were thinking, why they were thinking, what their context is. I feel that the context is going to get lost as the generations keep growing, right? Like, I now see 1-year-olds and 2-year-olds chilling on YouTube better than my grandmother is, right? And she has fully grown cognitive skills, and this child is just pinging and knows exactly what to do and how to do it. Why do you think this generation is so hooked on to this, this boredom economy that Siddha spoke about? Why do you think they're there? And what do we, as an entire ecosystem of brands, of content creators, of everybody, what do we need to do to capture their attention and hopefully singularly move them to this funnel of attribution, so that with whatever content we're generating on these platforms to entertain them, to basically influence them in whatever way that we would like for them to do, leads to that consumerism moment that we're all sitting at the center of, right? So what, in each one of you, right, what are you doing to enable this ecosystem, and what do you think of the Gen Z? I have a 1-hour conversation with anybody who feels like having this afterwards, but yeah, what do you think of Gen Z, and what are all of us doing to enable this movement to happen?
So I think the shift, what we've seen is we being born as millennials, we this innate trust that if somebody or some brand or some influencer said something, we believe that. Now Gen Z is coming in, and that was essentially because we didn't have a lot of access to that information back then. Now the Gen Zs have that in the palm of their hand. They've got a phone and they can question everything, and they do question everything. So with that ability, they're asking why if a brand is saying something, they're questioning that.
Correct.
And us as marketers, we need to be aware. So we can't just say that buy this brand or buy this product because this is the best. We need to relate to them. We need to talk about the larger purpose as well, which that brand or that problem is that brand is solving. So as if I talk about Dettol, I just can't go to them and say, just buy Dettol and wash hands. I need to have that. I need to promote hand washing. I need to promote those right habits. I need that purpose in line that they can relate to and they're aware of, so that tomorrow when they relate to that purpose, tomorrow they feel that, okay, this brand, whatever they're saying is right. And then they could go on and make that important purchase decision.
So basically the brand has to walk towards them and not them walking towards us, because they have so much more choice and they want you to be a better brand than what than what we expected brands to be, right? Like we took brands for granted in that sense. I think that's a fairly very valid point, Kirtiman, and I know like one of the best examples for me is the fact that Adidas, which usually has an average selling price of about $50 to $70 a pair of shoes, or at the top end $100 shoes, when they started to pick up plastic from the sea, they were able to sell the same shoes for about $300, right? And all of us millennials sitting over here would say, who gives a shit, why are we buying a $300 pair of shoes? But the Gen Z bought it, lapped it up, and that stuff is not available today. You get it on StockX for like $1,500. Yeah. So yes, they're asking for a lot of accountability, and the brands who are being successful with the Gen Z are being accountable to this audience, right? So that's a very, very valid point. Gunjan, you want to talk about how you are trying to mold this generation? You can't do anything to mold it off the knife, but
I don't think we're molding the generation.
Yes,
I think the generation is molding us.
Correct.
I really think it comes from what you said about a lot of options and choices, and we see this. So I see this at home. My niece and nephew, they're 15 and 10, and I really learn how media habits are changing and how their attitudes towards brands are changing. And I look to them for markers. So I remember like watching the show called The Great Indoors with my nephew. He was 8 at the time, and it's a show about this magazine publication house. It's a bit like 30 Rock or any of those shows that are set inside media offices, and they publish a magazine called The Great Outdoors. But the irony is that they've run out of money. They can't send journalists out in the wild. So they actually sit inside their offices, download images from the internet, and put out magazines about traveling and being outdoors. He noticed that everyone in that media office was using a Windows machine. And he turned around and said, Bua, you told me you work in media and that's why you have an Apple MacBook. But here everybody is working in media and they seem to be okay on a Windows machine. What happened? Now, that is how he picks up attitudes towards brands, right? Like now in his head, if you work a media job, you'd be fine on a Windows machine, or you might even excel at it. That is pull content. It's not push content. I think advertising as we know it, which was advertising by disruption, is over. So if you had a 30-minute TV show, just made 22 minutes was content, 8 minutes was ads, and there was an ad break every single, that is done for. We now need to literally earn our place as brands on the timelines and news feeds of those that are used to social media as their main form of media consumption. Today, I think social media is the biggest form of media that's consumed, and that's why brands are interested in figuring this out. Now, on social media, the channels that get the highest views, the channels that get the highest engagement is influencer channels. So if you want to show up on somebody's newsfeed or timeline, that is probably the most credible way of doing it, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to enter that newsfeed and show you an ad because I think if all of you are the same. Versus creators, when they put out ads or when they put out a story, most of them are just looking at content as, hey, I'm going to tell a quick story. And whether I have 1 minute because it's IGTV or whether I have 14 because, that's a good length to trend on YouTube, I'm going to figure out how to bring you in. And I think that's really important. Like we've seen this, Pratik, you and I were talking about this earlier. We work with Bacardi in 20 plus countries. We work with influencers in Russia, in Thailand, in Philippines. We don't speak the language in any of those markets, but we've had over 100 top trending videos across all these markets because we figured out the code. I think as long as you pay attention to the way social media behaves, and then you hand over the creative reins to those that do it best, which are the influencers in these markets, I think you've got a winning formula there. So
it's about hacking culture and becoming a part of culture, right? And today, I think when we were growing up, there were a few cultures, right? There was a Bollywood culture, and then there was a cricket culture, and then there was, I don't even know a third culture actually. But today, there are so many subcultures out of cultures that it's I mean, we work with Netflix in this country, and I will not tell you the name of the video, but there was this one video that came to me very randomly before it actually got published, and I happened to see that video, and I spoke to Rishabh, who runs the Rabbit Hole, which is the agency that does all the work for Netflix, and I fired him on the phone. Yeah, I was like, what the hell is this? What have we learned in life? These people are not coherent. They're not able to have a proper conversation. What the hell are we doing? This is one of our biggest brands. He said, just let it go live. And I said, cool, man, let it go live. And it had 4 million, 5 million, 6 million views, and I was like, shit, I don't understand this culture.
Absolutely. I think we've got to let it go. I think any form of control is done.
I can't, right? Otherwise you think of yourself as the person who's giving an insight, who wants to consume this content, right? At the starting of the digital journey, we often said that, would you like to consume this content? The answer was no, but bloody hell, there were millions of people who were willing to consume this content. So who the hell am I to say no, right? So I think that there is so much of unlearning that we need to do as an ecosystem, right? And there's so much more of risk taking that we need to be taking, right? Like, I understand that for a brand who's always done Dash Presents IFA Awards, for them to become like a part of a background of another video is a massive shift. But for us to understand the subtlety of marketing is a massive shift, right? Like the fact that I don't need to hire a 10 lakh rupee director anymore and still create content that's resonating with the youth is disruption, and disruption is all over, all around us. And this Gen Z, which is the last alphabet in the bloody alphabet, is causing us to think very, very differently. Over to you, Nakul. What do you think is happening differently with this generation?
I think as everybody said that, right? I think brands are discovering purpose, right? It's purpose-driven marketing strategies that everybody is trying to figure out. I think the big part, I think Gen Z is, if you look at even music, right? The kind of apps these guys are actually using, and obviously if you look at short form video apps, if you look at anything that we do around your hook steps, etc., all the music that these guys are consuming are now, at maybe 4 years back was at the backstage. Now this has come up, right? And it's actually creating a lot of challenge for the ecosystem from a perspective that how do you personalize that content for each user. So for us also, personalization is a very critical part for these kind of consumers, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of content, right? Today, billion views, billion, content pieces being created across platforms. How do you make, this? There has to be some method to the madness, right? In the sense that how do you ensure that, if I follow a particular culture, am I actually be, served that kind of content? I think that's another piece that, I think marketers are also looking at, right? It's not only about a platform or content, but how well you personalize that content, what content buckets you actually identify for these millennials, for the Gen Z is critical, right? So I think we look at, at Daily Hunt and Josh, we look at that very, very critically. Obviously the learning is on the go for last 2 years. It's been pretty interesting in terms of seeing different kind of influencers and Gen Z influencers themselves, interacting with the same kind of audience. If you look at, the kind of content feed that I see now is that, now even the celebrities are actually working with these guys in the sense of promoting movies.
100%.
These guys, are collaborating together. So I think life has changed, right? There's a 360-degree change, and I think it's here to stay. Hope, we're able to create some kind of, benchmark from an brand marketer's perspective. But yes, again, content and performance, right? And KPIs are, 3 different buckets. I think everybody needs to, manage that differently.
Yeah. So
one small nugget, while Nakul was talking about the music game, we've had a complete paradigm shift in the music game.
100%.
Back, billboards and the larger conventional medium used to control that top 10 list. Now we've got the Instagrams and the shorts, they've got their own list coming in and they dictate what the top 10 or top 5 trending songs are.
Correct.
100%. And you know, and also the exposure, right? Like, I mean, just a simple example, my house, like I mean, it's a Punjabi house who watched Hindi content all their life, and you know, one odd Punjabi movie when it came out, right? Today, my grandmother is watching South Indian content, like, and you know, she's watching South Indian content with Hindi subtitles, and you know, so she knew what this whole Pushpa thing was, and I'm just looking at her saying, dude, what the hell is going on? So the fact that we're getting exposed to so many of our own subcultures, right, is, I think it's great. Like, we would have never been exposed, right? Like, otherwise we would just look at Bollywood. But look at the content that's coming from the other parts of the country. Look at the content that's creating this change in conversation. And I think we're appreciating our culture a lot more than we did. And you know, I'm very glad for this democratization to actually have happened in you know. And you obviously have a lot of choice. But Siddha, tell me, how are you going to make sure that they make Bombay Shaving Company their choice? What are you going to do for the Gen Z?
The thing that you can do, like Gunjan said, is let them be. But if I were to like summarize a bit of the observations at least that we've had in this discussion and even now, right? So the reason why, like, we started to talk a lot, like when my mom used to do with me, हमारे ज़माने में हम ये वो all of that, right? So every generation's context is very different, hence their behavior is very different, and hence their consumption is very different. So if the context of us as millennials was globalization, emergence of internet, the context for Gen Z is multiple realities. Like, that is the beginning base. So their base reality itself is a multiple reality, and social networks, digital natives. I know some of my team members will probably appreciate it more if I liked a post and commented on their social rather than in person. Verbally I would have given them a compliment, right? So it's bizarre to me, but I've seen that. I've seen certain people like it more when I have interacted in that digital world. So I can understand how the metaverse, etc. will further play out. But hence their consumption, where our consumption was very experience-led and, you know, festive-based, and the consumption of Gen Z, and everyone has mentioned those, is very uniqueness-led, and hence the need for customization is unlimited and very ethical. I think these are the 3 prongs at which Gen Z consumes. There's no dearth of choices, and there's no dearth of information to be stored. I mean, storing is probably an over, but information to be gauged. And then how do you make it unique for the person? So I think the thing that, again, brands have to do is align to the aesthetic of the person. That's the only thing you could do. Within the Gen Z also, I think there's a whole time capsule, because India being 13 countries or more, is that Gen Z evolution also is on a very different scale. So a Gen Z of a tier 2 city is very different than a Gen Z of a metro and so on. So I think the nuance of being able to leverage localization, local creators and local networks, and being able to provide to each of them what they aspire and need to do or want to do, rather than somewhere to preempt their choice with them feeling that the choice is theirs.
Okay, we've lost her again. But I think Sahil has said that we're talking about short form video, but we're all sitting on our laptops, so he's joined from his mobile phone. So Sahil, before I come to you, I think I'll just close with Anupam in terms of Anupam, what
has to be a part of a conversation. Can you hear me? I feel that I've lost everyone again.
We lost you for a while. But I think we've got your point in terms of, you know, like understanding their context and then creating content ecosystems for their context is what I took out from there. But Anupam, just very quickly from you, what are you doing to welcome the Gen Z into this eyewear category that you will see them at, and you know, like, what is it that you guys are doing to create content, to create distribution for these guys?
So there's a major shift that's happening in the social team internally to cater to this, in terms of both expanding and getting creators in-house for that, and partnering with, we are doing something with Josh also, and we are partnering with other agencies in the country who have done really good work around that. But couple of learnings that we have had is this generation is quite different from us, the millennials. I mean, of course, we like transparency and weird cultures, but these guys have taken it to a different level. A very basic example that I can give you is, whenever I put something on social media which is more realistic and not very photoshopped or not very shiny, the engagement that we get from 16 to 25 years old people is much higher than what we used to get, for 30, 35 plus. And similarly across platforms. Similarly, even on TV for that matter, when you're live with something which is more real, more achievable, attainable in real life, we see the impact on organic installs, paid installs, organic traffic, everything, people commenting on social media, and things go really crazy. So, and taking that.
आप एक सेशन करेंगे अपने ब्रांड मैनेजर्स के साथ. सर आप एक ब्रांड मैनेजर्स के साथ सेशन कर लो, हमारी तो सुनते नहीं है. Maybe आप.
So, taking all those learnings ahead, what we're doing, we're trying to do content for subcultures that we're talking about. Right. For example, we can say that millennials love music and traveling. Here, in terms of Gen Z, one would say, okay, I like Coke Studios, nothing else. I like just rock music or metal or whatever, nothing else. Rest everything is just not for me. And you need to be in that space talking in their own language. They'll hold you more responsible rather than previous generations. So, for example, if somebody is, say, into hiking, mountaining and everything else, we have a product, it's a New Balance product that we have, which kind of, holds behind your ears. You can dance, sports and whatever, it will not fall off. That's the content for them. But at the same time, if there's a different kind of audience which is more towards fashion and lifestyle, the product and the content has to be very different for them. So, gone are the days when actually you create one master video and create 10 edits of it and it will work for you. You need to get into every smallest of subcultures, every small cohorts, talk to them in their own language, being responsible at the same time. So that's the kind of change we're kind of, and you will see in next 1 month on, hopefully we'll get there with time.
It'll be NFT this moment, sorry.
I need to understand. I'll call you for that.
Yes, please. If anybody tells you should be NFT that moment, you should fire them immediately. But for everything else, I will have a chat with you on that on Web3. But Sahil, we employ these people, we employ.
Yeah, I know.
We know what we've had to do to change the way that we that we look at things. Siddha said this. I once went and told a person, hey, great job. He told me that, can you go to my LinkedIn skills and actually put a +1 over there. I was confused out of my brains, right? I didn't know what to do. We've always been taught to go appreciate a person in person, but here we are. This is the generation we're dealing with. What are we doing as agency people to change this shift?
I think, Pratik, I think everybody's pretty much said from a today's point of view. I want to cover a little bit, if you allow me to, as to what we agency folks are doing, which is, let's say, 2 to 3 to 5 years down the line, and to my mind, right now, we're obviously living in a real physical world. We're existing also in a digital world, for sure. Increasingly so, and the shift that's going to possibly happen, and where we are going to. Sorry, did you lose me there? Hello.
I thought you will come back in a soon. I thought
you were making content.
Yeah.
And you say now let's get to the good part and then.
No, so I was speaking about the virtual world. Sorry, it's just my machine that's cracking up and I'm on my phone. So I was talking about the virtual world and what we are entering now is literally the virtual world, which is in the Web3 space.
Right.
And to my mind, the only thing that strikes besides everything that we all will do is content. And content is linked to a lot of creators. And the ecosystem in the Web3 space, pretty much in the metaverse and otherwise, is going to move there. While the today is sorted with what Anupam spoke about or what Siddha spoke about from an influencer marketing, all the collaborations, all the micro edits, all the campaigns that need like 1,000 different line items these days. I think we'll move soon to a world where it's all going to be where we are existing in a virtual world, and funnily enough, content will have a huge role to play with obviously the creator ecosystem. So yeah.
Thanks guys. I think these guys are going to kick us off if we don't stop talking now anyways. They're 20 minutes over time. But I think it was a fun session. We obviously spoke about Gen Z and what they're changing. We obviously spoke about short format video and what's happening over there. I think as closing remarks, what I'd say is that both of these are big realities. I think as marketeers, as content creators, as influencer ecosystems, as agencies, we're all coming together to try and bridge both of these with a hope that there's attribution, there is social commerce, there's an ability for us to put a little bit of science to the madness, because our generation likes to put science behind the madness. In 3 years' time, maybe madness is the only way that we work, or science is the only way that we work. But I think we have a good 3-4 years for us to try and bridge that gap in any way that we think is right. But I think together we need to come as a community, as we keep saying this. But Friday night we'll forget this, but hopefully we come together on Monday morning and try and bridge this gap for all of us. And thank you for being here. I think it was great fun, lots of insights, and good connecting with some of you who I know before and some of you who I've just gotten to know on this call. So thanks, and speak to you soon.
Thanks, Pratik.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Pratik.
Thanks, Pratik. Lovely interacting. Thanks, Pratik. Thanks, Dina.
Bye, guys.